Hiya ho out there to all my big brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, and of course, mommies and daddies. Recently, famously controversial ex-Nicktoons artist Butch Hartman came under fire, yet again. This time, not for scamming people into paying for his Christian streaming service, not for blaming another voice actor for someone's death, not deleting videos that show his aggressively evangelical or overall shitty behavior, not for transphobia, but for art theft! Again! So, Butch started taking commissions on his Twitter a while ago. Now, that alone wouldn't be noteworthy. If you want to pay a Cryptanker's numbskull who uses fan covers of Danny Phantom songs without consent or credit in his videos, go ahead. Where the issue comes in is that his commissions are, well, in my personal opinion, extremely low quality and low effort, along with being straight up plagiarized. I don't say this out of hatred for the guy or his work, but I say it because this art is obviously so heavily referenced that the commissions people are paying top dollar for might as well be lower quality redraws of the original fan art he used to make them. When I first saw these allegations, I was shocked. The first thing I saw was a post talking about how Butch traced someone else's fan work and was making money off of it. What the fuck, I said as I went to go see for myself. But when I found the works in question, I was more than a little bit disappointed. Not just in Butch, because he has certainly and yet again done wrong here, but in that people are calling this a trace of this. I hate to say it, kids, but that ain't it. It's unfortunate that we have to go over this again. But what better time is there to go over the differences between tracing and referencing and plagiarizing than with good ol' Elmer Hartman? Now, I want to be very clear that me pointing this out isn't a gotcha to say that he did nothing wrong, because he absolutely did. But I think it's important to be clear about why what he did is wrong instead of just using an incorrect blanket term that he can unfortunately but rightfully refute. Tracing, as some of you know, is when you copy directly over another piece of art, copying it as line for line as possible. Tracing is pretty consistently heralded as the biggest sin an artist can commit, but there are occasions when it's alright. So, for example, many industry professionals trace to keep things on model, or trace to produce background elements at a faster rate than they'd be able to by freehand. A big difference between DeviantArt tracing and industry tracing, though, is that industry professionals usually have permission to trace, or have bought royalties via whatever company they work with to trace elements without credit, or use their own images to trace. While, on the other hand, many beginning artists use other fan works or commission pieces, or of course anime screen caps, without permission to trace. Now, looking at Butch's work, this is obviously not a trace. The style is different, the lines don't match up, but Butch's is obviously still a lower quality copy of the other by 028ton on Twitter. So you might think, well, he just referenced it, so it's okay. And I think that's where a big part of the internet understanding of tracing versus referencing gets people. Because it is obviously referenced, but that does not make it okay. A reference is there as a guideline to help you along when drawing a piece, that a lot of the time is required for proper anatomy or size comparison. Taking pictures of clothing ruffles at an angle you find hard to draw, or holding up your hand in front of you to copy the pose for a greater piece is reference. Taking an image of a building off of Google and trying to freehand the building based off of that can also be reference, so long as the piece is ultimately transformative and not a direct copy. Your finished piece should have very few major elements of the referenced image left if you want to consider it an original piece. If you don't do that, you've just made a copy of recreate something else, even if it is in your own style. There's a reason you credit models and note things as still life and portraits when painting. You're making it known that this is a drawing of something that you saw. And still life drawings are great, and I'm not saying that you can never do a redraw of someone else's work. Hell, portraits are a form of art where you're being paid to copy someone else's visage as close as possible. It doesn't make you evil or bad to do any of that. What does bring you into question, however, is copying a piece without credit, copying a piece without permission, and copying a piece for monetary gain. If you are going to redraw something, you need to make sure and credit the original artist's piece that you are copying. I personally think that you should ask before doing a redraw, but as long as you're giving proper credit, I think it's still alright. If you want to sell the piece though, that is a different story. You need to make sure and ask permission if you want to do that, or use something that's come into the public domain. Otherwise, you are, in fact, plagiarizing. There are times where you'll be paid to recreate something existing. Like, for example, I was once commissioned to recreate the House of Mouse show floor as it would look if it were abandoned ever since the show ended. I still didn't trace it, but it was my job to reimagine the House of Mouse as a long-abandoned set piece. It was my job to make it look as close as I could while still staying with the theme. The fact of the matter here is that with Elmer Fartman, people paid him money for an entirely original drawing by him of these characters. They didn't pay him for a shitty copy of another person's work. Hell, this person commissioned him to draw Ranma, and he just made a poorer quality version of some official art with some different details. This isn't what he was paid for. This is a scam, and a cheap, quick way to get commissions he obviously doesn't care about out of the way. Of course, this is all just my opinion, and I'd love to hear yours. Leave me a message in the comments down below. What do you think about tracing and referencing? What do you think about Butch Hartman yet again ruining his reputation online? Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want. You don't have to, but if you do, I'll see you in the next one. I hope you have a scrabdangulous day. Later, skater.